ladies and gentlemen. I am Merrill Cook, Content Marketing Manager at Diffbot. Welcome to the third episode of our Netcast DataBytes, where we talk with data science and engineering leaders and thought leaders. I think that this time we have a guest who definitely checks both of those boxes. It is Doug Laney, who's the Data and Analytics Strategy Innovation Fellow at West Monroe, and the author of the best-selling book Infonomics, also a professor, and Forbes contributor, many things. Thank you so much for joining us today, Doug.
Hi, Merrill. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So there's this very strong thread, at least from an outsider perspective in your career, where you're wrangling with what good data means, how to define best data practices, how to monetize it. I mean, you coined the 3 V's, which are, part of the definition of big data. I'm curious, what drew you to sort of this high level thinking outside of the box about what data means? What drew you to that part of data in your career?
All right. That's a good question. I started my career with Anderson Consulting. Now, it's now known as Accenture. And in that, the projects I was working on, I got involved as a data administrator for a large 300, 400 person project we were working on for Sears. So that really kind of spurred my interest in data and managing data and understanding data's role in delivering business solutions. Then I went on to join an expert systems, one of the early first generation expert systems AI companies called AI Corp, where we worked on knowledge-based systems and natural language query solutions. And it became abundantly clear that it's all about the data, having the data correct and available and organized properly to be able to implement and deliver those solutions. From there, I got pulled into one of the early, perhaps the first ETL, extract, transform, load, data warehouse building companies called Prism Solutions. It's now part of IBM. And in running the consulting group there, I developed the industry's first methodology for data warehouse projects and business intelligence projects. That methodology called iterations is still used, still available through IBM today, like 25 years later. So that really spurred my interest in data. And as I kind of became known for someone who could, lead and drive and strategize around data warehouse projects, I got pulled into Gartner as an analyst and spent the better part of the last decade there in my second go around with Gartner, focusing on data and analytics strategy topics, the role of the chief data officer, and thinking about data's value. But to make a kind of a long story short, after 9/11, I learned that companies in the Twin Towers that had lost their data, not only the tragic loss of life, but had lost their data, tried to submit claims for the value of that data, and the insurance companies denied those claims, suggesting that data wasn't considered property. And so that kind of drove me down a rat hole, sorting out whether data is an asset, whether it's property, why or why not, why isn't data on the balance sheet, and stuff like that. And then I developed this hypothesis that organizations that don't, because data is not a balance sheet asset, organizations are not compelled to manage it the same way that they manage their other assets, even their office furniture. And so that kind of led me down this road of exploring the value of data, how to monetize data as an asset, how to manage it as an asset. So
interesting. Yeah, very cool. And I saw your most recent article still touching on this theme. It's like your most valuable asset might be your data. It might not be even your company, and it might not be people, it might not be anything else, which is really interesting. So you've obviously, besides compiling a database of hundreds of organizations and how they're driving value with data, you've worked many different sort of related roles. Like if you had to distill your experience into one rule of thumb, one quote, it can be your own quote. How would you caution people to drive value with data?
Well, the 3 components of this kind of comes back to the 3 main components of Infonomics, which is managing, measuring, and monetizing data as an actual asset. And this goes back to the old adage, which is you can't manage what you don't measure. And because organizations don't measure the value of their data, the quality of their data, some even don't even have an inventory of what data they have, And in today's age, that's just, for me, that would be a dismissible offense for any executive to not have an inventory or know the value of their core asset, even though it's not a balance sheet asset. And
Yeah.
I think it follows that any asset that you can't manage well is one that you can't monetize well. You can't generate sufficient or optimal economic benefits from it. So for most organizations, because they don't measure their information as an asset, they're incapable of managing it like one. And because they don't manage it like one, they're not able to drive sufficient value from those data assets. So it becomes kind of a vicious cycle for many organizations. And my guidance is to kind of flip that script or reverse the curse. Start measuring, understanding the value, the potential value of your data. You'll get the budget and resources to manage it like one, and that will drive improved ways of leveraging data.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, and I might be able to guess the answer to this next question based off that, but what's your biggest frustration with how data is managed? It might just be the flip side of that last answer.
The biggest frustration is that companies manage other assets, insignificant assets, with greater discipline than the way they manage their data. I was with a meeting with an energy company some years ago, and how it was reviewing their data strategy. And in the data strategy document, it said, we want to manage data as an actual asset. We want to treat data as an asset. Data is our greatest corporate asset. But then there was nothing in the document about even inventorying it. And so I mentioned this to them, and they said, yeah, we inventory our balance sheet assets, but not our data, and maybe we should, or whatever. After the meeting, I went into the men's room, and I noticed that they have inventory tagged every toilet and sink and urinal in the entire building. And so, they have an inventory of their toilets, but not their data, which is, it's just this incongruity that that persists throughout organizations. Again, because it's a balance sheet asset, and because accountants have told us that we need to inventory and understand what toilets we have in our building. We do that, but not with our data. So that's my biggest frustration.
Yeah. There's not even a chief toiletry officer either.
No.
Still do it.
No, but there's somebody who manages the physical plant, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
So what's you've been around since the advent of what we call big data. I mean, what trend has amazed you the most?
For me, I think it's just the internet itself, the ability to transport data and leverage data in incredibly innovative ways. The internet as a data platform for sharing data, for using data, for creating data has been beyond, I think, anyone's wildest imagination. Even if you read any kind of science fiction, it's pretty out there. So
totally.
I think that's been the biggest amazement for me. I'm not a digital native, and so for many digital natives, it may just that's what it is. But I come from a day before cell phones and even before fax machines, which were amazing in their time. But there's been nothing quite as amazing as the internet itself.
Awesome. Yeah. And what do you see as the biggest opportunity, just broadly speaking, with data at the moment?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity for organizations is to be aware of external data assets. And so maybe we're not talking about actual solutions themselves, but that too many organizations are kind of staring at their own navels when it comes to data and not aware of the wealth of data that's available externally. I think trading companies looking for alpha, have treaded new ground in that area, but most companies, again, back to asset management, have somebody who is in charge of procuring office supplies, right? But they have nobody in the business who is in charge of procuring data supplies. And there are millions of tens of millions of data sets published by government organizations in terms of open data. There are billions of websites that can be harvested. There's trillions of social media posts that can be harvested. So some companies are doing some of this, but generally they don't have anyone who's in charge of identifying and curating external data assets. And I think that's a huge opportunity for organizations. And those that do tend to be those that are really thriving in their marketplace.
Totally. Yeah. We would agree with that as harvesters of the web at DiffBot for sure. Well, awesome. We did it. We're here at 10 minutes and I'm going to stop recording. But thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you, Meryl. I look forward to seeing it produced.